I Shall Not Want, Chapter 2, and the shepherd looks at Psalms 23 by Philip Keller. What a proud, positive, bold statement to make. Obviously, this is the sentiment of a sheep utterly satisfied with its owner, perfectly content with its lot in life. Since the Lord is my shepherd, then I shall not want. Actually, the word want is used here has a broader meaning than might be first imagined. No doubt the main concept is that of not lacking, not being deficient in proper care, management, or husbandry. But a second emphasis is the idea of being utterly contented in the Good Shepherd's care, and consequently not craving or desiring anything more. This may seem a strange statement for a man like David to have made if we think in terms only of physical or material needs. After all, he had been hounded and harried repeatedly by the forces of his enemy Saul, as well as those of his own estranged son Absalom. He was obviously a man who had known intense privation, deep personal poverty, acute hardship, and anguish of spirit. Therefore it is absurd to assert on the basis of this statement that the child of God, the sheep in the shepherd's care, will never experience lack or need. It is imperative to keep a balanced view of the Christian life. To do this, it is well to consider the careers of men like Elijah, John the Baptist, or the Lord himself, and even modern men of faith such as Livingstone, to realize that all of them experienced great personal privation and adversity. When he was among us, the great shepherd himself warned his disciples before his departure for glory, that in this world you shall have tribulation, but be of good cheer. I have overcome the world. One of the fallacies that is common among Christians today is the assertion that if a man or a woman is prospering materially, it is a significant mark of the blessing of God upon their lives. This simply is not so. Rather, in bold contrast, we read in Revelation 3:17, "Because thou sayest, I am rich and increased with goods, and have need of nothing, and knowest not that thou art wretched, and miserable, and poor, and blind, and naked." Or in an equally pointed way, Jesus made clear to the rich young ruler who wished to become his follower, "One thing thou lackest. Go thy way, sell whatsoever thou hast, and give to the poor, and come and follow me." Mark 10:21. Based on the teachings of the Bible, we can only conclude that David was not referring to a material or physical poverty when he made the statement, "I shall not want." For this very reason, the Christian has to take a long, hard look at life. He has to recognize that, as with many of God's choice people before him, he may be called on to experience lack of wealth or material benefits. He has to see his sojourn upon the planet as a brief interlude during which there may be some privation in a physical sense. Yet amid such hardship he can still boast, "I shall not want. I shall not lack the expert care and management of my Master." To grasp the inner significance of this simple statement, it is necessary to understand the difference between belonging to one master or another, to the Good Shepherd or to an impostor. Jesus himself took great pains to point to anyone who contemplated following him that it is quite impossible to serve two masters. One belonged either to him or to another. When it is all said and done, the welfare of any flock is entirely dependent upon the management afforded them by their owner. The tenant sheepman on the farm next to my first ranch was the most indifferent manager I had ever met. He was not concerned about the condition of his sheep. His land was in neglect. He gave little or no time to his flock, letting them pretty well forage for themselves as best as they could, both summer and winter. They fell prey to dogs, cougars, and rustlers. Every year these poor creatures were forced to gnaw away on brown fields and impoverished pastures. Every winter there was a shortage of nourishing hay and wholesome grain to feed the hungry ewes. Shelter to safeguard and protect the suffering sheep from storms and blizzards were scanty and inadequate. They had only polluted, muddy water to drink. There had been a lack of salt and other trace minerals needed to offset their sickly pastures. In their thin and weak and diseased condition, these poor sheep were a pathetic sight. In my mind's eye, I can see them standing at the fence, huddled sadly in little knots, staring wistfully through the wires at the rich pastures on the other side. To all their distresses, the heartless, selfish owner seemed utterly callous and indifferent. He simply did not care. What if his sheep did want green grass, fresh water, shade, safety, and shelter from the storms? What if they did want relief from wounds, bruises, disease, and parasites? He ignored their needs. He couldn't care less. Why should he? They were just sheep, fit only for the slaughterhouse. I never looked at these poor sheep without an acute awareness that this is a precise picture of those wretched old taskmasters, sin and Satan, on their derelict ranch, scoffing at the plight of those within their power. As I have moved among men and women from all strata of society, as both a lay pastor and as a scientist, I have become increasingly aware of one thing. It is the boss, the manager, the master in people's lives, who makes the difference in their destiny. I have known some of the wealthiest men on this continent intimately, also some of the leading scientists and professional people. Despite their dazzling outward show of success, despite their affluence and their prestige, they remain poor in spirit, shriveled in soul, and unhappy in life. They were joyless people, held in the iron grip and heartless ownership of the wrong master. By way of contrast, I have numerous friends among relatively poor people who have known hardship, disaster, and struggle to stay afloat financially. But because they belong to Christ and have recognized Him as Lord and Master of their lives, their owner and manager, they are permeated by a deep, quiet, settled peace that is beautiful to behold. It is indeed a delight to visit some of these humble homes where men and women are rich in spirit, generous in heart, and large in soul. They radiate a serene confidence and quiet joy that surmounts all the tragedies of their time. They are under God's care, and they know it. They have entrusted themselves to Christ's control and have found contentment. Contentment should be the hallmark of the man or woman who has put his or her affairs in the hands of God. This especially applies to our affluent age. But the outstanding paradox is the intense fever of discontentment among people who are ever seeking security. Despite an unparalleled wealth in material assets, we are outstandingly insecure and unsure of ourselves, and well nigh bankrupt in spiritual values. Always men are searching for safety beyond themselves. They're restless, unsettled, covetous, greedy for more, wanting this and that, yet never really satisfied in spirit. By contrast, the simple Christian, the humble person, the shepherd sheep can stand up proudly and boast, "The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. I am completely satisfied with His management of my life." Why? Because he is a sheepman, to whom no trouble is too great, as he cares for his flock. He is a rancher, who is outstanding because of his fondness of sheep. He loves them for their own sake as well as his own personal pleasure in them. He will, if necessary, be on the job 24 hours a day to see that they are properly provided for in every detail. Above all, he is very jealous of his name and high reputation as the Good Shepherd. He is the owner who delights in his flock. For him there is no greater reward, no deeper satisfaction than that of seeing his sheep contented, all fed, safe, and flourishing under his care. This is indeed his very life. He gives all he has to it. He literally lays himself out for all who are his. He will go to no end of trouble and labor to supply them with the finest grazing, the richest pasturage, ample winter feed, and clean water. He will spare himself no pains to provide shelter from storms and protection from ruthless enemies and diseases and parasites to which sheep are so susceptible. No wonder Jesus said, I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd giveth his life for the sheep. And again, I come that you might have life, and that you might have it more abundantly. From early dawn until late at night, this utterly selfless shepherd is alert to the welfare of his flock. For the diligent sheepman rises early and goes out first thing every morning without fail to look over his flock. It is the initial intimate contact of the day. With a practiced, searching, sympathetic eye, he examines the sheep to see that they are fit and content and able to be on their feet. In an instant he can tell if they have been molested during the night, whether any are ill, or if there are some which require special attention. Repeatedly through the day he casts his eye over the flock to make sure that all is well. Nor even at night is he oblivious to their needs. He sleeps, as it were, with one eye and both ears open, ready at the least sign of trouble to leap up and protect his own. This is the sublime picture of the care given to those whose lives are under Christ's control. He knows all about their lives from morning to night. Blessed be the Lord, who daily loadeth us with benefits, even the God of our salvation. He that keepeth thee will not slumber or sleep. In spite of having such a master and owner, the fact remains that some Christians are still not content with his control. They are somewhat dissatisfied, always feeling that somewhere the grass beyond the fence must be a little greener. These carnal Christians, one might call them fence crawlers or half-Christians, who want the best of both worlds. I once had a ewe whose conduct was exactly typified this sort of person. She was one of the most attractive sheep that belonged to me. Her body was beautifully proportioned. She had a strong constitution, an excellent coat of wool. Her head was clean, alert, and well-set, bright eyes. She bore sturdy lambs that matured rapidly. But in spite of all these attractive attributes, she had one pronounced fault. She was restless, discontented, and a fence-crawler. So much that I came to call her Mrs. Gadabout. This one ewe produced more problems for me than all the rest of the flock combined. No matter what field or pasture the sheep were in, she would search all along the fences or shoreline we lived by the sea, looking for a loophole that she might crawl through and start to feed on the other side. It was not that she lacked pasturage. My fields were my joy and my delight. No sheep in the district had better grazing. With Mrs. Gadabout, it was an ingrained habit. She was simply never contented with things as they were. Often, when she had forced her way through some spot in the fence or found a way around, she would end up feeding on bare, brown, burned-up pasturage of a most inferior sort. But she never learned her lesson and continued to fence crawl time after time.